Well, hi everybody, Father Alex here. Welcome to another episode of the Godcast. Just in recent podcasts, I've been looking at matters of social injustice and exploitation, and this podcast is another little foray into this field, and we're going to hear quite a harrowing story in a few moments. So please do tune in. If you enjoy my podcast, then check me out on Twitter. You'll find me there at AlexDJFrost, or you could perhaps subscribe to the YouTube channel, or maybe check out my book, which is here, Our Daily Bread from Argos to the Altar. But for now, I hope you find this podcast now of interest, and thanks for watching. Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to another episode of the Godcast. In recent weeks, we've been talking quite a bit about matters of injustice and exploitation, and we're going to pursue that with a gentleman called Jacob, who's got a rather harrowing and interesting story to share with us. And we'll finish off by hopefully Jacob reaching out to people who might be interested in following this story further. Jacob, it's good to get you on the Godcast. How are you?
I'm very well, and thank you very much for giving me the time to talk about the campaign that Marlon West and I are working on. So thank you.
Yeah, just for
Yeah.
people who are listening, Marlon West is a gentleman who's recently been on the Godcast, so do check out our conversation. So, Jacob, let's get down to business. Let's hand the platform over to yourself and share with us your story and what it is you really want to tell us today.
Okay, so just a bit of background about what happened. This was some years ago now. My daughter, I only have one child, and that's a daughter. She went to London to spend some time with her aunts, and while she was there, she thought she'd get a job. And she did in a restaurant, and unfortunately, that led to her being groomed, drugged, and gang raped, and a lot of other things which I don't really want to go into. But at the time, I wasn't really given very much information about it. I have to be very critical of the police, I'm afraid, in the way they handled it. They didn't really give me all the facts. And they advised her not to speak to me about the case because I would, quote unquote, blame her for the incident.
We, Crikey, that seems quite crass and insensitive of them, Jacob. How did you get to know about the story? Did your daughter just come home, broke down? How did it happen?
Well, what happened is my sisters obviously called me and just said, "Look, I'm afraid something's happened, and she's coming home, and she'll explain it to you when she's there." And she came home. She explained, not in any detail at all, really, that she had been raped, but not the detail. I didn't know that it was she'd been a victim of a gang rape. I didn't know that she'd been drugged or groomed, although I had some idea that she had been groomed because of some of the things that she'd been saying. I should have picked up on those red flags a lot sooner, I think, as a father, that you're supposed to when you've got children, and I didn't. So she explained a certain amount, but wouldn't explain everything because she said, "Well, I've been told that you would blame me for this incident." And I said, "Well, look, that's simply not the case." I said, "I really need to help you." She said, "No, I don't want you to get involved." And because of that, I was never able to get involved in her case. And her case was pretty clear cut. There should have been a prosecution. Again, I can't discuss the details of my daughter's case because I don't have her permission to do that, which is why I use the name Jacob Jones, because, I can't actually make it known who she is and where she is. So she just excluded me, and the police excluded me from the discussion and the investigation. The
But can we establish some things? Were people charged for offences?
No. When this happened to her, she went straight to the hospital and therefore the police. All of the evidence was there. I mean, there's no question at all that they had an abundance of evidence. And again, I don't want to go into the detail, but there were injuries on her because I think what a lot of people don't realise about gang rape is it's just not grooming and gang raping. There is far more to it than that. I won't talk about my daughter's case, but you're talking about grooming, which is followed up with drugs, which is followed up with gang rape, which is followed up in some cases with mutilation of the reproductive system, which is then followed up in some cases with torture, and then in some cases murder, and then in some really horrible cases desecration of the body of the corpse. So these are very horrific crimes with their own characteristics. Rape in itself is bad enough, but you have all these other crimes on top, which is why I refer to them as grooming gang crimes. This is not one crime. This is a composite of crimes that are inflicted upon these children, girls and boys, from the age, of 11 up to about 14 or 15. These are small little children that have this done to them. And although my daughter was a bit older at the time, I'm very aware, obviously, of speaking to Marlon and campaigning with Marlon and reading some of the transcripts, which I'd like to say to people, read the transcripts, but you can't. They are truly horrific. Now, this has happened over the last 40 years. This has happened to, we don't know how many girls, but most estimates say about 250,000. And I would say that's realistic, girls and boys. Um, and around these crimes, there's only ever been fear and silence that's kept these things covered up. And that's what we're talking about, cover up.
And why do you think that is, Jacob?
Well, in my daughter's case, obviously, I saw how the police handled it in coercing her into not getting me involved in the first place, because I think they would have known that it would have been difficult for them to have not brought charges and prosecuted. Um, the things that were said to her, the things that were said to other victims, discussions with Marlon, he talks to other parents. It's quite clear that there's absolutely no question of this at all, and it's evidenced in the J report, an official government report that looks at this and other crimes, that there has been a cover-up. And of course, we're going to learn more about this cover-up with the Casey report, which is, I think, due out this week. So we know more details about that cover-up. But the people involved in the cover-up would be the police, who were either complicit, actually trafficking girls and boys, who were either complicit in the crime or weren't doing their duty. And it would be the same for the politicians, the councillors, and social services and care workers. This is a place that no one really wanted to go. There was a lot of fear around the subject. They fear the consequences of speaking out and losing their job. So
And
it's covered up.
within all that, Jacob, obviously your daughter doesn't want to publicly talk about this, but as a dad, I often, in a lot of the situations that I'm faced with as a priest, I often try and put myself in the place of the parent as a dad of three grown-up
Hmm.
kids. When you hear about such atrocities happening to your daughter, and then you establish that nobody has been kind of able to show you any empathy or compassion.
Mhm.
What does that do to you as a dad and a human being?
I'm pleased you brought that up because what you've got is a situation where the if these crimes were committed on me, that would be one thing, but they're committed on my child. That's worse than violating me. You violate my child. Having done that, there are further violations by the state. because they don't want to engage with you. No one wants to talk to you. I've actually lost friends over this because I've tried to talk to people about it because I realise the silence has been the real evil. Parents don't want to talk about it. Not that that's their evil. It's just the shame and all of the things that come with that. That's happened to your child. So you're dealing with all these emotions, and then when you do try and discuss it with somebody, you see a shuffling of feet. People sort of moving away because they think, well, this is a bit odd. You know, is this true? Are you a racist? Are you this? Are you that? And no one can really understand what's happening because you don't really hear about it. So you've got this, so you feel toxic. As a parent, you actually feel toxic. You feel all these emotions inside where your life has been torn apart. And then on top of that, other people then start adding to that destruction of the person who you are that wants to say, look, this is happening. Please, can we talk about it? Please, can we do something to stop it? But up until recently, I mean, things have changed recently, obviously, with the whole subject of grooming gang crimes being more publicly known. But this happened to my daughter many years ago. So back then, no, it's not something anyone at all wanted to engage with. And therefore, it continued. And therefore, it became worse. It never got better.
Mm.
I mean, we had the Alexis J report I think published in 2014 and again in 22. And this is still happening to girls and boys. It's still, so it's because we're just not getting through to the public, to parents, and saying, look, we need to protect our children. And this isn't, I don't want you to think that it's one ethnicity. There's a lot of people involved in this. And it's not for me to say who that might be. It is for the government to have a statutory national inquiry, a public national inquiry, which is what we've been calling for, which is what's been called for in Parliament, but gets nowhere. And I recently, sorry, I don't want to keep rambling. If there was something
Right,
else you
it's
wanted to add to
important. Well,
this.
it's important, Jacob. Carry on what you were going to say.
Well, what I did recently is I contacted my MPs, a Labour MP, and I said to him, look, I wanted to discuss this with you because I noticed that you voted against a national statutory public inquiry. I said, I want to know why. And
Jacob, just before you progress, what
mm,
the National Public Inquiry is asking for what? What is it you want to see?
we want to see why this was allowed to continue by the state. Yeah, the state has enabled these crimes through their silence and through their active cover up of the crimes.
Yeah,
We want to know why that is.
yeah,
What was the motivation behind that? And we want perpetrators brought to justice, but we also want those people who didn't do their job brought to justice. Because how can things change if the people who are there to protect us don't do that?
yeah,
And that's what a national inquiry does. It informs us about where the failings were. I can only guess at where the failings are. This is just my view I'm giving you and your listeners. But of course, I don't know. I don't really know. I don't know how many people are involved. I don't know who was involved. That's what a national inquiry does. It's no good having these local inquiries where they set their own homework and they mark their own homework. That's an insult. That's a slap in the face. This has happened in more than 50 towns and every city in this country. It's not a northern thing. People think, oh, it's Rotherham, it's Rochdale, it's this, it's that. No, no, it's not. It's a nationwide problem. And we want to know why. The inquiry will tell us why.
yeah. And sorry, I interrupted, but so you reached out to your MP and
To my MP and said, I need to know why you voted against the inquiry. And he said a number of things, but he said, well, at the end of the day, he said, I voted in accordance with my conscience. I said, well, that's clearly not true. And the reason I know it's not true is because I've looked at the way all of the Labour MPs voted, and virtually all of you voted no. Now, that is not vote of your conscience. That is a partisan approach to politics where you're using children as a political football. You had the Conservatives saying yes almost entirely, and you had the Labours saying no almost entirely. That's politics. That's not about our children. This
That
is an insult,
yeah,
an absolute insult to us.
it is. There is a juxtaposition, isn't there? Because I mean, I'm not a huge fan of members of parliament, but you do assume that you can rely on these people to give an authentic voice and speak with integrity. But you're still
Yes,
saying this is about political gain, and the potential of not, by not doing it, you're not going to upset a certain group of people, and and it becomes political, which is plays into my whole issue around apathy and lack of care, and uh,
yes.
you know,
Well, I'm pleased you brought that because that then brings me to the Church of England. And I'm sorry, but I'm here to say what I need to say.
hmm.
And obviously, I respect all the work that you do. I know what you do because I've checked you out. So, um, and for the first, I work as a volunteer from a very young age. I've always volunteered. It's something, I was brought up a Christian, and I was taught how important charity is. And from a very young age, I was doing that. I started out by taking sick pilgrims to Lourdes. That was quite a journey. Did that for a number of years, and that progressed on to things like having working parties to repair churches. That would be, the C of E churches. So I've always given back, and even in my own village, being part of the parish council, just doing things wherever I can. I strongly believe in that because it's something that you do not for yourself, but just for a wider community.
Hmm.
It's not just buildings; it's nature as well. The two things that I love in my life is the natural world and the historic built environment. Two wonderful things. So I spent my time doing this. And then I went to one of the churches that I'd repaired and just said, I think I need some help. I'm starting a campaign and I need some help. And I was put in touch with the relevant people. I don't really want to name and shame, but the relevant people. And I was declined because I was told that what we were doing was political. Helping little children is political. That's what I was told. I said, no, you've made the wrong decision. In my own mind, I know that is the wrong decision. I want to appeal that decision. And I did. And I was turned down for the same reason again. On one side of this, of course, it's political because it's been made political. That wasn't my choosing. That's something that happened. On the other hand, this is about children, victims of gang rape, and much more than gang rape. And I expected that the church would want to be a part of this. But again, it's their fear. I think it's their fear of engaging with something that could turn out to be very toxic.
And just to, obviously, we don't want to name names, but I presume you spoke into the higher echelons of the church. Would that be right?
Not to the top, no, because that's a difficult thing to do. Perhaps you can help me with that. But, as high as I could go for what I needed at the time, yes. Yeah.
So we've got we've got a story here, really, of desperate exploitation, grooming of a child,
Mm.
where nobody has ever faced the just criminal justice system for those crimes.
Correct.
And
Correct.
when you've turned to national institutions such as the Church of England
Mm.
and um, Westminster, you've just hit a brick wall.
Yeah. Mm. As I've done in many cases. To be fair, I've just started to make some traction. Katie Lamb MP, I'm sure you know Katie, she's been very vocal in criticising Jess Phillips for her recent motion to take away the few local inquiries that we were going to get. And Katie was very critical in Parliament when that happened. I realised that she believed in what she was doing. It wasn't just scoring political points. So Marlon knows her better than I do, and he said, "Can you be a part of our campaign?" And she's agreed. So that's really encouraging when you get that kind of traction. Also, I'm talking to the Football Lads Association. I don't know if you're aware of them. That they're going to have a march on the 28th of June this month. Their association is to stop violence and racism within football, and they're very concerned about the presence of grooming gangs, and that's the purpose of their march this month on the 28th. So anyone who can make it, it's starting at Brussels Square noon to and marching to Westminster. So they're engaging. Obviously, Marlon's engaging, and other people who perhaps your listeners wouldn't know. But suddenly, you hit these walls as we just mentioned, but then suddenly you penetrate the walls and you kind of get somewhere with it. But it's hard work, and it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be hard work. Um,
Yeah, and this your account resonates very strongly with Marlon's account. Of when
mm,
you turn for help, and
yeah,
there's a total
avoid.
fix. And
Mm.
this campaign, you hopefully will put pressure on government.
Yes, yes, we certainly hope so. So we've got something that we've labelled the New Jarrow March. So I don't know how much you know about the original Jarrow men. They're from Jarrow, Newcastle. This was back in the 1930s. They lost their jobs because the shipbuilding industry just collapsed, and had about 65% unemployment. And they campaigned for work. That's all they wanted, was the dignity of work. So they were called communists and agitators. Just as the fathers of grooming gangs are thought of as racists and extremists in some way, for whatever reason, I don't know, because we're not that way at all. That's not what we're about. We're about justice. And so I saw this synergy with the men of Jarrow who had to walk to Westminster and say, look, please give us the dignity of work. What we're after is the dignity of justice for what happened to our children. So I thought, wouldn't it be good to march in the spirit of the original Jarrow men? Because Newcastle's had its problems with grooming gangs, and some of the towns that we're going to march through have had their problems with grooming gangs. So I'm hoping that along the way we can deliver presentations to make people aware, because that's another big thing, is I want people to be aware of the red flags. When this happens to your children, you need to be aware of it, so that the campaign is about education as well as collecting those signatures, both online and on paper, as we march through to London, so that when we get to Westminster, hopefully the numbers will be big enough that we would have given Parliament a good idea about the way people feel about this, and that we must have that inquiry. You can't hide from it. If there's anyone out there that's part of the Labour Party, this will never go away for you. And the more that you resist it, the worse it will become. The optics are not good for you. Do the right thing. Have the inquiry. Do it properly.
Are you gathering any media interest in this, Jacob? Are you?
Yes, yes, we are. GB News have expressed, particularly Charlie Peters. He's helped me and Marlon in the past. So we're hoping that we've got at least one channel that's going to cover us, but there's no sign yet of the BBC. So I hope they do engage with us.
Yeah, well, I will certainly share this with the media contacts that I have, and
Thank you.
and it's sometimes I would just encourage you to be um, resilient and hopeful. Sometimes I drop something on social media, thinking nobody's seen it, then all of a sudden a journalist from whatever paper
Yeah,
and you only need one or
yeah.
two to see that,
Mm.
and the snowball gets bigger, doesn't it? And
It does, yeah. And I think, newspapers, various other channels, I think, please try to help us on this march because it's not going to be our last attempt, but it's going to be a big attempt. And it's on the 17th of August, just so that your listeners know. And we're starting from Jarrow on the 17th of August. So please, if you can be there, you don't have to march the whole way. You don't have to be as mad as I am or Marlon to try and attempt the whole march. Hopefully, we can do it. But please just join us for part of the march along en route. If you go to our website, which is parentspeakup.org, go to our website and all the details.
button again. We sorry, listeners, we just lost Jacob for a moment. Jacob, you were telling us about where we can find more about you. Just continue.
Yes, so please, for any parents, and this is parents of victims, survivors, or just concerned parents. If you're a parent, this should involve you. This should interest you to know more about what's happening in our society. So if you are concerned about what's going on, then please go to parentsspeakup, all one word, .org. And we've got a website, it's up and running, and you'll see the details online of what we hope to achieve with the march and the education program that we hope to deliver along the way. So please go to that website, find out more, and message us. If you can, just message us, and if you've got anything that you'd like to add to the campaign.
And just finally, Jacob, this happened to your daughter many years ago.
Mm.
What is it that drives you to, I understand when things get under the skin that you can't let them go. But what is the key thing here that's driving you?
The key thing here is, and you might have to help me out with this because I don't know where the quote comes from originally. The key thing here is for me is that my father told me, he said, in order for evil to prosper, it takes good men to say nothing. So I'm speaking up.
Yeah. Well, I've got the utmost admiration for you, Jacob, and I feel it's the least I can do is to offer you this platform to tell people about it. Do keep in touch with us.
Thank you.
People who are watching this do
Mm.
follow up Jacob's signposting to the website and just say thank you, Jacob, for sharing your story on the Godcast.
Thank you very much, Father Alex. Thank you very much for the time and the space. Thank you.